I was fascinated by the idea of people from a damaged future infiltrating the present, knowing they'd have to be careful to remain as invisible as possible so as not to mess with their own history.
Oh boy, it's a time travel podcast. My name is Nate, and climbing this podcast to 40,000 feet, it's Brian Martin.
Yeah. Hey guys. Now that we're here and we're talking about airplanes, I'm like, man, was this the right time? Was this the right year to talk about airplanes?
Fair. I literally just saw an article about a Delta flight that had to stop because it was smoking in the cabin.
These fuckers, I'm sorry. The fuckers from the movie Millennium just have their work absolutely cut out for them right now. But they are culling so many people. Future society is going to be lit after 2025. They couldn't have asked for a better year.
Well, yeah, speaking of Millennium, as we often do this season.
It's like a drinking game. You give us 10 minutes of your time, you'll hear a reference to the movie Millennium.
I think I've used one in every track that we've put out this season. At least something.
It's running the risk of overtaking the clock that went backwards at this point.
It is.
As most referenced episode.
Well, maybe we'll rein it in here after this one, but I just want to say, when we actually had finished watching Millennium and before recording it, I had to scour the internet to give myself some context to what I had just watched. And one of the things that I did after experiencing that movie was I came across a YouTube channel called the Unapologetic Geek, who had done a deep dive into this movie. It had all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, some of the things I think I actually brought up on the podcast without giving the man credit. And I started a conversation with him because how many people know Millennium?
That was kind of the thesis of his video.
Right? And our podcast, I feel like.
And that's how you caught this virus, this voice in your ears.
Uh-oh. There he is. Eric Magill, welcome to Oh Boy, a Time Travel Podcast. Eric, if you don't know him already from your travels on the internet, he has a YouTube channel called the Unapologetic Geek, a couple of podcasts at one point, and some that may be starting up again.
We'll see what happens. It's all up in the air.
He's a published science fiction novelist.
That will come into play when we talk about Millennium, for sure.
Because you were very inspired.
I was very inspired. Yeah.
Whether you knew it or not at the time, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I realized it at the time, but yeah.
This movie has that sort of effect. It's like the thing that gets in your brain and then you utterly forget about.
Exactly, and then it pops up later.
I have yet to forget about it. So
yeah.
It's still pretty much an obsession of mine. But Eric, like I said, welcome to the show here. Can you give us a little idea of what your channel's like? From what I've seen, it's a lot of science fiction classic reviews, which are the episodes that I've really liked.
Yes, and that's the majority of what I do on my channel.
Okay.
I use the word review, and that gets me in trouble sometimes in the comments because people don't think that what I do is technically a review.
Right.
It's more of a retrospective, but sci-fi classic retrospective is more of a mouthful than sci-fi classic review.
That's fair. Yeah, I think we had that conversation on our podcast, whether this is a review podcast or not.
I will research the heck out of a movie.
I know.
And then I will make a video dedicated to every individual movie. And it's got to be at least 30 years old. That's my rule. It also makes it a lot easier to get through the copyright system.
Oh, okay. That's one of the things that I really liked about it was how behind the scenes all of these were. I was watching the E.T. one just yesterday, and I had no idea it was supposed to be a horror movie first. You know,
yeah,
like
the original idea was a horror movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting, the stuff that you kind of pull out of the air in doing that, because I watched all of the Star Trek ones first. I'm a big Star Trek guy. And I thought I knew everything about these movies. And Star Trek V, you gave me some appreciation for Shatner's involvement in that.
I will take that as a compliment because that is a very difficult task.
Yeah, I usually blamed him for everything, but most of the things that you talked about were studio involvement and what his real vision was. So it's a great channel. And then your book. You're an author.
Yes, I am an author. I've been a writer since I was in 5th grade. And as I got older, I tried to get a novel published. And that's very, very, very difficult.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
not easy.
Eventually, I decided, my goal in life isn't to become like some famous published author. My goal is just to be a published author. So what's the harm in self-publishing? So one day I'd had enough. I'd gotten one too many rejection letters and I just published my own book myself. I didn't really publicize it very well, but it got really good reviews from the people who read it, and I was satisfied. I was perfectly satisfied with that. One of these days I might publish again because I've written more books than that. But what makes this important for the purposes of this podcast is that the book, called Paradox, you can find it on Amazon. Paradox by E. Magill.
Yeah, I read the preview. It's like time loop.
It is.
He read the preview. It's hard to get Nate to read things, so that was a real big get.
It's good. It was a good start for sure.
People seem to like it. But as the writer, if I go back and read it, I'm embarrassed the entire time I'm reading it. And everybody's like, why are you embarrassed? It's just the way it is for a creative person.
Yeah, but here's the question. Do you think that Chris Christopherson looked back on his time on the set of Millennium with embarrassment? I would say probably yes.
He seemed completely out of his element. I don't think he even knew what movie he was making.
Yeah.
The thing I like best about your Millennium retrospective is the observation that he's kind of perfect as this like government pencil pusher that's like at the end of his rope.
Yeah.
And he is. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because it's like...
Do I look that bad?
He's really good at this, but it's also the last kind of character you want to watch a movie about.
True.
Wait, is that your hero? That's your hero.
This is the best you can do. It's been a long time since I've known the touch of a woman. Oh, God, come on, buddy. Buck up, would you?
But yeah, one of the things that inspired that book that I wrote was Millennium. And it was because Millennium stuck with me as a movie with a lot of unrealized potential. Like a lot of really cool ideas, but it's kind of a mess.
Yes.
And I thought, you know what? I can do better. I can do better than that. And I think I did, but I didn't have Chris Christopherson, so I don't know.
Yeah, you missed the boat on that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But I agree with that 100%. I think I said when we talked about this before, Brian, is if there was a movie that I would want somebody to take another crack at, it was this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, out of everything we've watched.
Yeah, I would love to see this vision fully realized another way. And as part of the reason I wanted to go back to this short story, I felt like the story, if it were narrowed
Condensed.
down, just condensed into something like that's just the germ of the idea, I'd be really excited to read that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been tackling all month.
That's true.
Germs of ideas that matured, either deliberately were cultivated into something bigger, like La Jetée to 12 Monkeys, or just, I read a story about time travel once, and it stuck with me, and I thought, hey, I could take this idea and make this story around it. Right. And so
time crimes.
I think it's really cool, Eric, that you managed to take these ideas from Millennium and kind of craft something else around it, like realizing that there's real potential in there. Because a lot of these time travel stories we're talking about have come about the same way.
Yeah.
Well, how much did you pull from the movie for your book?
Not a whole lot.
Just inspiration?
I do
Sherman's
have,
in it.
like...
Sherman's in it, right?
I do have... No, Sherman is not in it.
We have major problems. What happened?
But I do have, like, a badass future chick coming to the past to try to save a ruined future. That much is the same. But my book goes in a lot of completely different directions. And my first rule when I was sitting down to figure out my book was I have to decide on my time travel rules and I have to stick to them.
Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules?
Good
Bingo.
for you.
Bingo.
Because that's the thing that pisses me off the most about time travel stories is when people aren't consistent. I beat the drum against Terminator 2, and it gets me in a lot of trouble because I don't feel like it's consistent with the rules that were set up in Terminator 1.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. Don't get me wrong. Terminator 2, great movie. But the time travel pisses me off.
Yeah, you and Brian are going to get along. You should do the podcast together.
Sticklers. I always say, Nate, what is the first thing I say you need? You need a good time travel rules. No, I say the first thing you need is a good title.
A good title, a poster, and a tagline.
A tagline. And then you
Right.
need your time travel rules.
My favorite from the first season was Looper, and their rules are all over the place.
Oh, yeah,
so
no
I don't
consistency
agree
at
with
all.
either of you. I want to see a movie where you can cut a guy's leg off in the past and have it disappear in the future. That's
It's
what I
very
want.
visually interesting, even though it makes absolutely no sense.
I fucking love that movie.
I do feel like that movie gets a bad rap.
Yeah, from people like Brian.
Yeah, it did. I've grown to like Looper quite a bit, but I did not like it when it first came out.
It's one of those movies, kind of like Millennium. I feel like it's trying to do too many things at once. If you're going to have a 2-hour movie, it should be about one thing. It should be about the time travel.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be about time travel and a psychic kid.
Yeah, I was like, why are there mutants in this movie? Like,
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's pretty much what we landed on too. But I couldn't get away from the fact that the atmosphere of the movie, the way it's shot, the characters, I just loved it too damn much. Not that I didn't see that flaw. I knew that flaw was there, agreed with it. But at the same time, I was just like, these people are just too cool. It's like a Western. It's like a noir. It's like all of these mashed together into something that was just wonderful for me.
It's a great piece of film.
But Brian's theory about Millennium kind of opened my eyes to it, that it's 3 different movies, like the 3 different acts are 3 completely separate genres. If you watch the movie with that in mind, which I did like last week, I watched it again, it works. He's right. He's absolutely right.
Millennium was in development hell for like 15 years.
Yeah, definitely.
It was a long time. And this is something I didn't realize until I listened to your video, that the script was written and Varley got so tired of waiting for the movie to get produced that he turned it into the novel because of that.
Right.
Right.
So that's an interesting trajectory, going from short story to spec script to novel back to movie. It's like,
It definitely feels like a mess that came together.
By the time they actually started rolling cameras, they had so many different things like shoved into this movie. It became a mess. It's too many things at once. It's trying to do too much.
and you know, it's funny, Nate, that you brought up E.T. being originally a horror film, because I would argue that for about 15 minutes, it is a horror film.
The one scene that's in the movie, E.T., that really feels like what Spielberg originally envisioned is the scene with the kid in the house and all the lights are flickering and all the appliances are going crazy and you got the red light coming through the keyhole. That is a scary scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the movie was supposed to be.
Especially for kids.
Yeah.
I just want to say, before we get too far into this, Nate, I cannot believe that we ended up recording this on Daredevil premiere night.
I know. God damn it.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Well, this is actually Brian's fault.
It is my fault. It's totally my fault. My kid was in bed by 8:50 tonight.
Damn. That's pretty good.
And the babysitter got the flu. So that was my wife putting him to bed.
Oh, well, good for her. Yeah, round of applause. Well, listen, the last question I have for you, Tug, before we actually dive into talking about this short story is, did you bring your olives?
I did not bring my olives, but I did bring key lime yogurt covered pretzels.
Well, damn.
Shit, what the fuck is that? Whoa!
What do they do in the Midwest? Is that what they
I
do
don't
out in
know,
the
man. I'm from
Midwest?
Florida, so.
That's where you get... Oh, man.
Well,
I gotta get to the store before those tariffs go into effect. Get me some of them pretzels.
I did bring some olives, and I pulled out some new ones, Brian.
Yeah?
I said, in honor of having our first guest on the show,
Oh, you got the fancy ones?
yeah, Pearl's garlic stuffed olives.
Garlic stuffed?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I
That's
figured
bold.
since we're all by satellite here, you're not going to smell it anyway.
That's fair.
So I'm going to try it out.
If this were a Pepe Le Pew cartoon, my computer would be melting right now.
Ooh,
I don't
boy,
think that sounds nearly as bad as the jalapeno. That did not sound pleasant.
those were good, though. Like, they were hard to eat at first, but they were gone by the end of the week. So,
Wow.
yeah, I got a taste for those. But what do you got over there, Brian?
Same thing.
Oh,
Tuscan
okay.
Garden.
All right.
The stuffed manzanillas. They're very taut. Fresh one, you know, they kind of got that crunch to them.
Yeah.
They're good stuff.
All right. Well, I am trying this out. Do you want to tell us what Air Raid is about?
Yes.
Whoa, wait a minute. Doc, are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me? Precisely.
Good.
He's been dying to tell us.
Okay, here I go.
Air Raid. Short story by John Varley, whose name you'll recall from Millennium. If you haven't already picked up on that. In
know
the
about
future.
this.
I'm sorry, man. I got to interrupt. I mean, the face that Nate's making.
Oh, God, Nate. Nate's having an issue over there.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
I think he's going to gag.
it's not good.
Nate, were these supposed to be used in, like, cooking?
I don't know. It doesn't say that. Oh man. All right.
Try like 4 or 5 of them and maybe it'll sink in.
Just put them all in at once. No, I'm going to wash it down with my whiskey and Sprite. Oh, brother.
Man, Nate, much like the passengers aboard Sunbelt Airlines Flight 128,
Good segue.
may have flown a little too close to the sun.
Precisely.
Air Raid by a noted science fiction writer and occasional screenwriter, John Varley. In the future, Earth is harsh and inhospitable. Its inhabitants, mutated via the genetic winnowing of humanity, struggle to save and dominate each other. But one group is desperately trying to ensure that humankind has a future, one that perhaps does not involve leprosy. These are the brave members of a snatch team, post-humans in various states of decay, who travel back in time to pluck doomed airline passengers from the timeline and transport them to an Earth-like planet to begin anew. Mandy, a stand-in for a stew named Mary Sondergaard, and her teammates Liza, Pinky, Dave, and Christabel travel back to September 15th of 1979 to collect these unwitting saviors of all humanity while avoiding paradoxes and, I guess, falling apart before their mission is complete. But can their portal be maintained in the future long enough to save this plane load of people in the past? We find out in Air Raid.
Or at least 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
That was a shocker right there at the end of the story for me.
Oh, yeah. Woof. Man, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but that ending, chef's kiss.
It's intense. I like
that last paragraph, I was like, that's how you land a short story. This is not how you land a plane, but this is how you land a short story.
That's funny. I had a different response.
I mean, it's bleak.
Well, of course. It's an extremely bleak story.
Right. So, how many times have you read this, Eric?
I read it once when I made my video, like, years ago, but in the last 2 weeks, I think I've read it 4 times. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've given it a couple of pass-throughs, and that's saying something for me. I think the last thing I read was The Clock That Went Backwards.
No, the last thing you read was the subtitles on Logic A.
That's true. God. Well, what do we think about this, gentlemen?
I think our guest should start.
I mean, I like it. I think it's more harrowing. It's more bleak, for sure. And it's also written like a cyberpunk story, even though it was written before cyberpunk was even a thing, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, when was this published?
70-something?
Yeah, 75, 76, somewhere in there.
Yeah, but that's before cyberpunk, because cyberpunk wasn't a thing until Neuromancer, and it was like early 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of feels like it. It feels like a cyberpunk novel, just without all the digital weirdness.
Yeah.
I wanted this to be the movie condensed, and like, here's the germ of the idea, and I don't know if it works for me. I don't think it's what I wanted.
I think this is the germ of the idea. I think it manages to pack in basically everything that Millennium presents, even if it's just one sentence. Like, the notion is presented of leaving something in the past.
Right. They even talk about having left a stunner in the past once.
Yeah. When I got to that sentence, I was like, there's Millennium. It's like basically when they wrote Rogue One, and it just took like one sentence from the opening title crawl and turned it into this entire movie.
Right.
That was the one sentence they turned into Millennium.
We have to cover our tracks. Once a snatcher left her gun behind and it went in with the plane. Nobody found it. Or if they did, they didn't have the smoggiest idea of what it was. So we were okay.
Obviously, the portal is a bit less ambitious here.
Well, it depends on your imagination.
In that we're not sucking a whole airplane through it.
Yeah, I mean...
I think it's funny that the portal kind of stays in one place, but the plane's flopping all over the place, and you kind of have to wait till it lines back up with the portal.
Yeah, they talk about how hard that is to line it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a whole, section in there about it, you know, which I think is pretty interesting. Like, what I like about this short story is that it spends just enough time explaining the process not just in terms of time travel, but explaining the process of cosmetically what these people have to go through to be able to pull this sort of stuff off. And I love the times where it just flat out doesn't work. Mandy's lip starts falling off, and like the leg falls off.
Yeah, like she can't close her mouth. She needs
portal
dentures.
Appears in the wrong spot, and like she can't reach the stewardess that she's supposed to replace.
Right, because it came like backwards. Right.
It's on the other side of the bathroom.
Right.
Like, shit like that happens.
Yeah, you have to use your imagination, but she says she can see through it. so she can see the person that she needs to grab, but if she tries to walk that direction, she'll be going through the door and back where she came
through the
from.
portal.
Can't stun her or anything. So,
like all this janky shit, and humanity's whole survival depends on this crap. There's a lot I really, really like about it. And the notion that the people on the Snatch team are just as fucked up as, like, the people on the council in Millennium.
Right.
They're all just, like, skins falling off.
Like, I think it's one of the very first sentences she talks about having to plug her leg back in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she leaves it by the side of the bed and just kind of puts it on before she leaves or something.
So many of the notes I have in the margins are gross. And then I just keep going.
I think the grossest part is the first line. They have alarms in their heads that force them to get up.
Oh god, yeah, that's disturbing.
Oh yeah, vibrating my skull.
I was jerked awake by the silent alarm vibrating my skull. It won't shut down until you sit up, so I did.
That's dystopian.
The most dystopian sentence I've ever read in my life.
Can you imagine not being able to hit the snooze button?
Okay, campers, rise and shine, and don't forget your booties, because it's cold out there. It's cold.
You just smash your head into the wall.
Oh my god. That just
It
sounds
won't
like
stop buzzing until you stand up.
that just sounds like torture.
Awful.
And maybe I'm reading it funny, but it's interesting that there's like a time limit that they have, it seems, to get to where they need to go. Like, they've discovered this flight 128 in Sunbelt Airlines, and they're like, we found it. And now all of a sudden everybody has to hurry and go do it. Like, it's time travel.
There is this janky rule in this story. I didn't really pick up on it until I read it 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
But there's this rule that it has to be chronological. Once you've visited a certain point in time, you can't go back to that time or any time before that. You have to keep moving forward. And that's why they talk about how they just stopped wearing high heels last year, and they did that in the future too.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this weird wormhole logic where you can only go back to a certain point and then from that point forward.
Yeah, and then the movie kind of takes that, and it's just like we can't revisit the same place twice, right?
Yeah.
Because they go all out of sequence in the movie.
That's really weird.
It is a really weird rule.
I
haven't seen that before.
Is there anything else? We've not covered anything else that had that rule.
I mean, my book kind of does that.
I don't know, yeah.
But so, if I'm understanding this correctly, then, like, because this flight is in 1979, they can no longer go any further back than 1979?
That's what it seems like,
Yeah.
just from my reading of it. Yeah.
Weird. Okay, I didn't pick up on that. I did notice that it was chronological. I did see that they were talking about that, but I didn't think it meant like they couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I read it the first time I read it. That's what I thought they were going for. In this one event, it had to be chronological, but I think it's always that way. Like, they can't go before 79. Yeah.
That works to the advantage of placing a deadline on this. You can't just keep doing this and doing it and doing it. Eventually, you're going to run out of time. Like, in the literal sense, like you're going to back up into it.
Right. That I understood. Maybe because I was equating everything to the movie as I read it. Basically, I'm just reading this thing going, oh, that's in the movie. Ooh, that's in the movie. You know, I understood the idea that, okay, they've got one shot at this. Like, that's basically what I took from it was that, okay, here's this event and this one flight, and they got one shot to do it. But it didn't occur to me that, okay, now that they've found the flight, they still have all the time in the world to actually plan it and go, don't they? I mean, wouldn't they?
It doesn't seem like it.
It doesn't seem like it, yeah. They seems like they're in a hurry.
What is this? How does this time machine work?
The alarm went off because they had it set. Yeah.
Once it starts, once you pop, you can't stop. It's like Pringles. You know, it's...
So when the computer finds the flight that they're going to go to, countdown starts right then.
It seems like it.
The problem is that the portal can't be maintained for longer than, like, 90 minutes.
Right. But just don't start it until you're ready.
You see it in the story, like, there are sort of setbacks that happen in the future that end up taking longer in the future than they do in real time in the past, right? So that's the other wrinkle here, is the amount of time the portal's actually open for in the future is a fraction of the length of the mission itself.
Once we'd started the snatch with me entering Sondergaard's room, there was no way to go back any earlier on either side. Here, in 1979, we had a rigid 94 minutes to get everything done. On the other side, the gate could never be maintained longer than 3 hours.
Right, so they have a really limited window to even pull this off. Why is that? Technology. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing I like about this short story is that it doesn't try to over-explain it. I feel like When you're writing about time travel in short story form, you can get too bogged down in that, and it'll just ruin a story. It'll just become mind-numbing. So I like that they don't try to explain it. At one point, it even lampshades it. It even says something like, I don't really know much about time travel theory, but I do know the logistics of it. Yeah.
She does say that in her narration.
Her being as burnout and accustomed to this process as she is also helps there, because even if she does understand it more than she lets on, she just doesn't have the energy to go into it.
Right. It's like she doesn't really care. Yeah.
Yeah, so much of this is just like, well, I guess we'll see what happens next. Good luck to these clowns, you know, like she's jaded and just kind of counting the days until she's one of those wimps being shoved onto
Gnomes.
a plane.
What is it? A gnome? What are they?
Yeah, gnomes. The wimps are the brain dead.
The brain dead ones. Yeah. That's who I was talking about. But I guess
the gnomes were
different.
She said she would become one of the gnomes that gets like plugged into the computer and like becomes part of it.
Am I the only one with this thing printed out?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, probably.
Come on. Analog over here. I got notes and underlined stuff. And all right, you guys.
I
using
appreciate your
technology.
dedication to the written word, but
yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just old. It was good to have something physical in my hand to read. But I just feel like if you've got that limited amount of time in a short story, why make such a weird rule?
I think it just helps with the narrative nuts and bolts of the story so that it can sidestep a lot of those obvious questions, like, why can't you just go back and try again?
Yeah, I guess.
I also find it really weird the way the paradox works in this story. I mean, in the movie, it's time quakes, which I'm glad to be rid of.
I have a time quake approaching.
Paradox. Time quake approaching. Force 3.
In this one, it's like
Love
if the
time
paradox
quakes.
happens, it just resets. They fade away and go back to the future.
They come back like nuts. That didn't work.
Yeah, or the people in the future would just like disappear, go back to the past, and become. I forget what he said. He said something really weird, like they become jarred spaghetti sauce on the side of a hill or something. Yeah.
The people you've worked so hard to rescue are spread like tomato surprise all over some goddamn hillside in Carolina, and all you've got left is a bunch of ruined wimps and an exhausted Snatch team.
Yeah, something goop related.
Yeah.
The only goop I remember is the sludge that she uses for blood. Is that what she says? Something.
Yeah, it's sludge, yeah. They don't completely explain it, but it feels like her blood is constantly being recycled. Like she plugs into something called a porta-pack, and it gives her fresh, sugar, oxygenated blood, and she gets really drunk off of it.
Did anybody here picture Cheryl Ladd while reading Mandy?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not even close.
Not at all.
Really?
You know what I kept thinking of the whole time I was reading this, and even the process of like the cosmetic procedure to make them look more like normal people, I kept thinking of that Batman the Animated Series episode, Feet of Clay, the Clayface episode.
Oh, yeah.
He has that like cream that fixes his face.
Yeah.
Right? Makes him handsome again. Like that felt like, oh, they got to put like just a bunch of shit on their face.
Yeah, because she talks about something being printed, and she has to like mold it to her head and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Mission Impossible and stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly. She had to wait for the synthetic skin to like sink into her skull or something.
I think the main reason I didn't picture Cheryl Ladd is that it's made abundantly clear that she's completely bald, and she doesn't have that crazy 80s ridiculous hair.
Yeah, I just pictured like Cheryl Ladd because she's sitting at the mirror trying to build this face.
Right.
I pictured her trying to build Cheryl Ladd's face.
I kind of missed Sherman in that scene.
Yeah.
And I want to know how, like, you guys, you do a time travel podcast, and you didn't even mention the fact that his name is Sherman, as in Peabody and Sherman.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, did we skip that?
Yeah, we didn't mention Sherman's possible namesake there, but I don't know. That movie just gave us so much to think about. It was like cinematic sleight of hand.
That's why this is the third episode on this subject.
Could not have possibly picked out the right cup that reference was under. It was just like, what we ended up talking about late was like, why was she walking with a limp again? You know, like,
It's true.
it's really a movie that just multiple layers. You keep peeling them, you find something new every time. It's the best kind of cinema.
It's the kind of movie, every time I watch it, I feel differently about it. Like, I'll watch it one day, and I'll love it, and I'll watch it the next day and be like, that's a terrible movie. I never want to watch that again.
I'm trying to get as many people as I can to watch this movie.
You gotta see how people react to it. Yeah.
It's such a bizarre movie. again, we need to stick to the short story here because that's the topic. As far as, like, now that I've got a new set of ears to listen to my ranting about this movie, it's like, it's just such a bizarre take of, is this good? Or is it horrendous? Or is it somewhere in between? Like, what...
Yes,
and
the answer is yes.
I've just become so obsessed with squaring that circle.
I do feel like the short story answers a lot of the questions that are left over in the movie. They talk about how a lot of the wimps, they pre-mutilate them before they get them on the plane. So they already look like they've been through the wreck. And in the movie, if you'll remember, there's that line where one pilot goes back and sees that they're all burned up and comes back and says, and in the movie never addresses this at all. I feel like maybe in an earlier draft of the script they explained it like this.
But why would they have to do that? The plane's still going to crash.
Well, in the story, they say that they want to try to mold them so that their like dental records will fit or something like that.
The wounds are consistent. Like everything is consistent.
They just want to make sure that they get it all right. If the dental records would be applicable, they would have to like make the teeth right. But otherwise, they could just smash up the face so that the teeth are all over the place. You know, that kind of stuff.
But there's also a moment in the movie where the wimps are walking past the people that are disembarking.
Yeah, and they all look fine.
And they all look, and it's like, oh, that guy looks exactly like me. What the hell is that all about? And he's like, no mutilation at all. And that was one of the things we picked up on when we watched the movie. Like, what was he talking about when he said they all look like they were on fire?
Yeah, that was one of the things that bugged me the most about the movie, yeah.
But it makes more sense, like you said, once you've read the short story, you're like, oh, okay, I see where that idea came from, and it probably just slipped through the cracks in a draft in the screenplay. Yeah. And ended up in there.
Because when they did finally get around to making this movie, they made it in a hurry. So
yeah.
In the movie, they just mentioned that they can't recreate the soul. Because I guess it works better if they're just basically making meat and teeth. You know, because what the fuck's wrong with your counsel? If you can make synthetic bodies like that, why is one dude just a nervous system? Like, give this guy some muscles and bones.
There's also a line in the story about she'd had a baby and the brain bugs ate the life out of the baby's head and that baby became a wimp. That's messed up, man. That's so fucked up.
Yeah.
I hate wimps. Every time I grab the harness of one of them, if it's a child, I wonder if it's Alice. Are you my kid, you vegetable, you slug? I joined the Snatchers right after the brain bugs ate the life out of my baby's head.
Yeah.
There's no explanation, just brain bugs. Okay.
Yeah,
it's the future, man. Dystopia. Do they ever indicate what is wrong with the world? I know they talk about acid rain in the movie, but...
There was a term that's in the story that I really liked. They said the old world was pre-mech, M-E-C-K, and that could mean so many different things. It could mean, like, robots. It could be like, you know, robot uprising. Or it could just mean, like, muck, like, just gross stuff. Something gross happened.
Like these olives.
Yeah, like there are olives everywhere.
Yeah, like these people just started falling apart. Leprosy came raging back.
Yeah, they said something about paraleprosy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a finger fell off while she was sleeping.
What's it to you, buddy? It's like, something like that.
It's like,
that
was a
that's
weird
in
line.
my notes. I did want to talk about that one line. And what's it to you, bugger?
Yeah, what is that? Where did that come from?
Well, the author is just suddenly talking to us. Like, before it was just sort of a narration. It wasn't like addressing you. But
as if that's any of your business. I'm like, look, dude, I'm just reading your story.
I mean, what's going on with that line?
She's got some weird lines in the story. Like, at one point when she's, like, stunning the passenger, she says, "Hi, I'm Mandy, fly me." Or, "I'm just trying to work my way through college." What is she... Why is she saying these things?
Yeah, that one is also on my list. So
I think the brain bugs got to her.
Yeah, seriously. Let me back you up a little bit on that, Eric, because I really do want to talk about both of those lines, honestly. So, I didn't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see another line in this story that was addressing the reader.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's the only one. What's it to you, bugger?
Like that one line, a week earlier, a finger had fallen off in my sleep. And what's it to you, bugger? Like, why...
I didn't ask you to tell me about that. Like,
exactly. Who is she talking to? And then the one that you just mentioned, Eric, she says, "Pardon the intrusion. I can explain everything, you see." And then, of course, clocks her over the head, and then it comes off as like an 80s one-liner.
It doesn't even make sense. Like,
Yeah,
even
like,
as an
no.
easy use one-liner, it's like...
It's a
what?
complete non sequitur. Pardon the intrusion. I can explain everything. You see, I'm working my way through college. Like, what? Like, one,
Zing.
the girl's already unconscious by the time you did. So who are you saying that for?
Well, she's still workshopping it, obviously. This is something that she's using all the time.
I don't get it. I just don't understand.
I gotta tell you, though, there are a number of lines in here that are among the best lines I've ever read in anything.
Not those two, I think.
Going back to where she's getting her cosmetics done.
I smiled at myself. How nice to have lips.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never really thought about it, but yeah, it's pretty fucking sick, you know?
Yeah.
Lips, pretty good.
Pretty good if you haven't had them. Yeah.
In all honesty, though, I did make a note of the worst string of words I've ever read and the maybe best line of anything we've covered. And
Ooh.
the worst string of words...
The gun made a sound like a flying saucer with hemorrhoids.
Those are just random words, man.
Like, that's not even a... That might be AI.
That's not a thought.
Yeah. I don't even know what to visualize for that. I don't know what's... That was rough. Best line in anything we've ever talked about.
Oh, God. Here we go.
I think my ass just fell off. Can they hold it together long enough? Yo, it's wild. There's some wild shit in here.
And she also has, like, one... As a sci-fi fan, I like fictional swear words, coming up with different ways to swear in the future.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this one has one where she goes, standard friggin' oil. Like, that's so random.
Yeah.
And I like that in this weird dystopian messed up future where everything is bleak and everything is horrible and everybody's falling apart, she still says friggin' instead of fucking. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about the swears and stuff. Those come out the most when she's talking to the passengers who have very real rational concerns throughout this.
Yeah, and she's just getting mad at him and stunning them for no reason. Like, there's that college kid who's like, I'm on your side. Are you trying to help me? And she does something to his face. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, look, are you trying to rescue? She's like, shut the fuck up and sit down. Whoa. Or I'll kill you, she says.
And then right at the end, she's like looking at him and like, oh, look at them with their perfect bodies. I fucking hate them.
Yeah. I did really like that, though. Oh, man, even in the future, when everybody's falling apart, still cat.
Yeah.
How about I haven't the smoggiest idea?
That's cute.
There was one that I'm pretty sure was a typo on the version I found online where it was like something came out of a delivery slot, but it read slut. And I'm like,
Oh, that's the one I read.
that cracked me up.
Yeah.
That's the one I read. I just assumed it was slut.
Delivery slut is so much better. I think we should adopt it.
I mean, like, we have DoorDash. There should be delivery sluts. It's like a mixture of DoorDash and OnlyFans.
Delivery sluts. Well, there is a delivery slut in the movie.
What?
When she's in his hotel room, is one of the scenes where they use the time portal to just drop clothes in.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the magic portal.
They do something similar in this story,
Activate
too.
delivery slut.
She could just order things. She had a voice recorder and she just order it and say, hey, send me this. And then the portal would open and just drop in the clothes. I think that's kind of what they were driving at. But yeah, I did jot down, I haven't the smoggiest idea. It is definitely written in 1979. That's their biggest concern at that point was smog. In LA. It's like, oh, this is going to get bad. 1,000 years from now, it'll be a swear word.
I also want to point out that when she goes into the first stewardess's hotel room and she finds a pack of cigarettes, somehow she smokes 6 cigarettes in 5 minutes. Now, I haven't been a smoker in like 20 years, but I'm pretty sure that's not possible.
You know what I pictured? I cracked up every single time they brought up the cigarettes because in the movie, they're smoking because they need to match the air intake of their future.
You did not smoke enough, Louise. No new degeneration. The levels of complex hydrocarbons in your blood are depressed due to breathing the primordial atmosphere of the 20th century.
Which was cool.
Here, they're smoking because they need that smooth menthol flavor.
The air is rich in hydrocarbons.
And they can't get it because tobacco's extinct. in the future, but
Tobacco is worth its weight in blood,
Right.
is what they say.
I assume not their blood, the blood of like healthy people.
Well, I think the idea is blood is somehow a valuable commodity in the future.
Yeah.
Because she's got sludge instead.
Like in the very end, she talks about like blowing the ration with her boyfriend, and she's talking about blood. She's talking about like blowing the ration of good blood.
The mental picture I had with the cigarette thing was, you remember on The Simpsons that like
Yep,
only
that's
stock
what
photo that the news had of Homer? That's what I pictured. I was like, boy, this is ridiculous. 25.
Yeah, he's got like a bajillion.
Like his whole mouth is just filled with it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but I couldn't remember where I had seen it. It was like in my brain, but I couldn't make the connection as to where I had.
I'm 99% sure it was a Guinness World Records thing, and then The Simpsons made the joke about it.
Joke of it, yeah.
But yeah, she stopped after she clocked that girl, sent her through to the future, and then sat down on the bed and smoked her cigarettes.
Every last damn one.
It's like, I'm just going to take a minute
All
here.
at once.
Granted, I only have 90 minutes, but I think I'll sit here for a second and smoke all these cigarettes.
And they do it again on the plane while they're waiting for the portal to come back. They just like sit there and get their blood from the porta pack and smoke cigarettes and laugh at each other. Yeah.
It's so weird.
It is a very strange story.
There's so many weird, bizarre elements.
And in the future, everybody's last name is like a city. This is
the
where
city they
Louise
came from?
Baltimore came from.
Okay, yeah.
Because there is a character who's named Baltimore Louisville, so that's where you get Louise Baltimore.
Yeah, I did underline all the names of all the characters. Liza Boston.
Boston, right?
Yep.
Is what I'm just like, I'm definitely going to use a city name. Christabel, David and Pinky.
When I see Liza, Pinky, and Dave, all I think about are the ghosts from Pac-Man. Like, I see Pinky's right there in the middle, and I'm like, was that the Pac-Man
I do
ghost?
like that one of them is just Dave.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah.
Dave. who
Liza,
has,
Pinky, and
what-
Dave.
He's got magical voice powers, apparently. Because he
Yeah.
can always, like, imitate the pilot. And he can be a stewardess. You know?
And he can be a stewardess, yeah.
Really good voice artist.
He was glad to be rid of the heels, right? Wasn't he
Yeah.
that
He's the
said
one who
that?
said something about the heels, right?
Hey, at least we're not in heels.
So, looking at the name structure here, and like we've got Boston, we've got Baltimore, Louisville. If we're to assume
And
that
Pinky.
these,
Don't forget Pinky.
There was another one with, like, a C. It was like a Caranet or something like that.
I want to think that these people are named after places they came from.
Yeah, like what is it? Zombieland does that, I think.
If that's the case, where do you think Mandy's from? Because I'm going to say her last name is like Jersey City.
Mandy, Jersey City.
Yeah, no, I kind of got that idea too. I think before I even read the story, I was thinking about her last name being Baltimore.
Nobody has that name. It's definitely a name that was in a script, you know?
Right, but I think that's good. I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing. I think it's cool because it's like 1,000 years from now, assuming surnames kind of fade, names of cities will probably prevail into the future, you know? Even if the city disappears.
Your protagonist was named Bill Smith.
Bill Smith.
So it's like, like
That was
obviously this stands out.
1989.
I love that you've got this, like, really awesome literary name, Louise Baltimore, and then you've got Bill Smith.
Yeah.
Literary name, you say.
Well, because it's so unnatural.
Yeah.
Ultimate.
But I will
every
die
name.
on this hill. I love the name Louise Baltimore. I think it's a great name.
It's a really
hated it.
great name.
I hated it, but
It's a weird
I love
name
it
for
now.
this character, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like Louise Baltimore sounds like she should be maybe a member of royalty from some like bizarre nation you never heard of, but she's also like a trained assassin, which I guess Louise Baltimore kind of is, just a little
It's
more
the
slapsticky.
Louise that throws me off more than the Baltimore. Like, Louise is I mean, let's face it, it's an old lady name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
what
your
were
Aunt
the other
Louise.
names? Were like Susan and
Oh my god, yeah, they all had weird
They were
ass
all
names.
terrible. Yeah. Pinky is better than Susan.
Pinky is such a weird Narf.
What is Narf? Do you mind telling me what that is?
Yeah, like what a weird name.
the character of Covenant in the movie, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's Alfreda Baltimore Louisville, I think is kind of the stand-in
Kind of
for
stand-in.
that.
Character, yeah.
Yeah. So she's named after the place that she likes and the kind of pasta sauce she prefers. That's where names come from.
Alfredo Baltimore Louisville.
Mamma mia.
She is the director of operational teams, a lifeless face with tiny slits for eyes. What can you do when all the muscles are dead?
Yeah, at one point she has to, like, paint a smile on her face because she can't actually smile. It says in the story that she, like, draws a smile.
She sketched a smile with a fingertip drawn over lifeless lips.
It's like the closest she can do to show her appreciation.
Do we wish there was a Sherman?
I do.
Oh,
yes. It wouldn't have fit at all in the horrible, gross, bleak tone of this story. It would have been off-putting to have a snarky robot talking about his mother being a cash register.
Yeah.
I don't remember the line now. She made a good profit, or she turned a tidy profit.
She turned a tiny profit, too.
But I did still miss him, because I love Sherman and his terrible, terrible costume.
Those words will be engraved in the annals of understatement.
Did you read the novel?
No, I have not read the novel. I want to.
You didn't read the novel? Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we got to get there.
No.
Yeah, I'll read the novel and we'll come back and do it again, yeah.
There we go.
We'll have a 4th episode on Millennium.
I'd like to see Sherman in this, if only because I would like to know Mandy's inner thoughts about Sherman. Just an unadulterated opinion. What somebody who has to live with him actually thinks of him.
I don't feel like Sherman was a bad guy.
No, Louise loved Sherman.
Yeah.
Louise wanted Sherman to come with them.
But he has no place in that future.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Like, you have no idea what the future holds. How do you know there's no room for you in that future?
The script needed a sacrifice, damn it.
But Covenant already gave us that when he got all struck by that blue lightning.
Yeah, because we were really broken up about that one.
Hey, I like Covenant.
There are a lot of, again, great ideas in here. There are some ideas that I'm like, man, I really want to know more about this, and we don't get it in the movie, and we don't get it here. When, I guess, a loudspeaker or something is explaining to all these people who are for some reason naked.
Well, they had to put their clothes on the wimps when they went into the plane.
I guess that's a good point.
But they didn't give them robes or something.
So they can make wimps, but they can't make clothes.
Exactly, yes.
There's no more, like, wool, I guess. I don't know, but, like...
They used up all the polyester.
The pilots are already naked. And I'm like, whoa, fucking party in the cockpit, huh? Like, they got that started quick. But then it's like, oh, everyone's fucking naked. Well, how weird would that be? Like, no wonder none of these people wanted to get off the plane without being like, what's going on here? But
they're all in, like, a holding pen with this loudspeaker saying, we'll give you a plow and 3 axes. It'll be great.
Yeah, yeah. And there's one line in there that I think is awesome, too. And it says... But as Americans, you should be proud of your pioneer heritage. And my only comment here is MAGA.
That was really weird. I did make a note of that also. They don't mention how far flung in the future this future is, right?
It just has to be further than 2190. That's the only date they drop, yeah.
That's the only date they give in terms of people not knowing what a stunner looked like.
Right, right.
So I guess it was invented in 2190.
So why would he evoke America at all? 79 is when this takes place. If it was written in 75, if
it's written in 75, we're talking about the bicentennial.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Appealing to our American pioneer heritage just makes me think of, like, how terrible it was on places like Roanoke and shit, you know? Most of those people died.
Take your plows. You guys love this shit.
I made a note that said you're basically just telling these people they're going to die like on the Oregon Trail.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, it was like...
Your pilot has died of dysentery. Yeah.
You know the Oregon Trail? You're going to live it.
It's rough. It's real rough. Like, it's...
I did think it was strange that he would mention America at all. I mean, I guess, obviously, the political climate in 1975... I didn't even really think about it being the bicentennial or what have you, but it jarred me. And I don't know if it's because of the political climate today or what have you, but I tripped over it, is what I'll say.
What if it had been like a Russian airplane and they had been like, as...
Mother Russia?
Good comrades for the party.
As collective farmers, you will embrace your Russian heritage and you'll be given a plow and like an ox.
I don't know if that almost makes more sense than to appeal to American pioneer.
That's absolutely true. Like,
yeah, it's not like they chose this.
Even in 79, nobody's going for that. It's like, no, I'm supposed to be at the disco tonight.
Like, how many of these people on this plane are farmers?
Yeah, my first reaction to it when they brought up the farming, it's like, the trip will take 5 years. Upon landfall, you will be entitled to 1 horse, a plow, 3 axes, 200 kilos of seed grain, and I just highlighted and said, this fucking sucks. I would be like, put me back on the crashing plane, please.
And you've established that they're American. What, they don't know what a kilo is.
That's true also. That's fair. Is that a lot?
Oh, that's funny. That's true.
So this voice just drones on and on. No one will be forced to go. We wish to point out again, not for the last time, that you would all be dead without our intervention. Like, the guilt trip. That's fucking great.
Thanks, Mom.
There are things you should know, however. You cannot breathe our air. If you remain on Earth, you can never leave this building. We are not like you. We are the result of genetic winnowing, a mutation process. We are the survivors, but our enemies have evolved along with us. They are winning. Can I get more about that? Like, tell me more.
Can I join them, maybe?
Right. Yeah, okay. Just run out of the building. Hello, hi, white flag, I surrender. This has got to be better than a plow.
I'll take my chances.
So what are we saying, that the dystopian future is due to some kind of war?
I think the war is because of whatever genetic or physical catastrophe happened, and everybody's just trying to rush towards the scraps. And this is the only group, I guess, that is trying to find a way to preserve the future. This is a pretty good idea. Taking doomed people, you get them by the airplane load. That's a lot of people at once, you know? But is there a better way to be doing what they're trying to do?
I'm still a little confused about what they're trying to do and why bother.
How many people on the Titanic? Like, that's got to be more than a plane.
I don't know. I do get the sense that the human race is facing extinction and they're just trying to find a way to preserve the human race. And that makes sense to me. I feel like people would do that if we were at the very end. I mean, assuming we weren't already killing each other.
At least they have respect and they don't alter the time stream. It's like, we're going to pluck people out of doomed situations.
Right.
Right. Well, they don't want a time quake, Brian.
Time quake approaching. 4, 3.
Yeah. That's what you get when you leave one person alive on an airplane and a stunner behind with him.
You see, that was the problem with the movie version, is because they left a person alive along with a stunner.
It's good that we brought up Looper, because we were just talking about if you've got one idea that changes the environment, right? Like adding mutants to your time travel story or whatever. At the end of this, they do talk about they're not repopulating Earth, right? And they're not saving the people that are still
like Centauri
on
3
Earth.
or something.
Yeah,
They're
Centauri 3.
So, like, when they get off the plane, they then have to get on a spaceship and go to another planet. Like, now I'm wishing I had read this without the context of the movie, because I keep trying to equate them.
Doesn't matter.
Like, square it up.
Yeah, right?
I also wonder, when I read it for the first time, whether or not I would even understand what's happening if I hadn't seen the movie.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that too.
that's
Plus,
a really good point.
I don't know how to read, so it was difficult. I was glad to have had the crib notes that were the movie. But again, this was 8 pages, and the clock that went backwards was 11 pages. So
a clock that was backwards, infinitely harder to read.
I feel like that's probably true.
And this story still does not explain the watches going backwards in the movie version.
Well, and why should a clock not go backward?
Yeah, that
still
always
doesn't
stuck
make
out
any
to me. Like,
sense. Yeah.
why did we do that?
But they don't mention anything like that here, though, right?
No, not at all.
Okay,
No.
good. That is a disappointment for me from that movie. I mentioned in the pod, I think. It's a neat enough idea that is just ends up being a throwaway thing so that the audience realizes stuff is weird.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. That's all it was. It was just something that was like thrown at the wall to be, pay attention, there's weird, mysterious shit going on.
Yeah,
I bother to
exactly.
explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was disappointed by that.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, again, like I said, I'm following the context of the movie while I'm reading this short story, for better or worse. And my feeling was that their mission was always to kind of save Earth and save the planet by repopulating it with healthy people. But this is like, no, we're taking you from the plane, but then you're getting on a spaceship and we're shipping you out to Alpha Centauri. And most of you are going to die anyway.
I think Varley may have just like written himself into a corner. He'd made the future so ruined and so bleak and so terrible.
Like, you can't rebuild.
He can't rebuild, so he just decided at the last minute, you're going to Centauri 3. Like, I'll put that in there. Yeah.
Well, you see, he had this 90-minute time limit on his story, and he couldn't go backwards. So he just
his
had to
agent
come
was
up with something.
Breathing down his throat.
Time was running out. It's not like he could do a rewrite. He didn't have the time for that.
Yeah, honestly, I think I like the outcome of the movie a little bit better, even though the Timequake stuff, it's squirrely.
I do think it makes more sense to like send them into the distant future because it's keeping with the same idea of time travel.
Yeah, because eventually you'll get to a point where whatever humanity has done to the timeline doesn't matter anymore because humanity is gone and Earth will still remain. And the idea behind that is like we just go as far into the future as we can beyond the scope of humanity and then start anew there. And so that makes a little bit more sense in terms of like what you're talking about, Nate. The goal being saving the Earth. Here we're talking about saving humanity, but I don't want to fucking plow a goddamn field. Mad respect to the farmers.
I hope they give
them
clothes at some point.
You're one of the ones that would die of the dysentery, I think, right?
Oh, I know I'm not making it. I am not making it at all here.
In the way they describe the people from the 1970s, too.
Fat and sassy.
Fat and sassy. Thank you.
Fat and sassy. We've taken 100 fat and sassy people from the 70s and dropped them on Centauri 3. Jeff Probst is there. You each get one plow. Flint. This is bullshit, Jeff.
Oh my God.
But what I like, all right, but I did say at the beginning, I said at the top that I did like the ending, like the last paragraph of this story, because of how bleak it is. You know, like you go from hearing all this shit about here's what your life is going to be like now, and then you get one paragraph where Mandy says, but really this is what your life is going to be like now.
5% of you will suffer nervous breakdowns in the next few days and never leave. About the same number will commit suicide, here and on the way. When you get there, 60 to 70% will die in the first 3 years. You will die in childbirth, be eaten by animals, bury 2 out of 3 of your babies, starve slowly when the rains don't come. If you live, it will be to break your back behind a plow, sun up to dusk. New Earth is heaven.
I hate you all, but I really wish I was going with you.
And then that last line, God, I wish I could go with them. Some of them are going to be eaten by animals. You're going to bury your babies. You're going to starve. All this stuff. I wish I could go with them. Man. Whew. That's a good final line. That's a good final line.
Yeah. Sure would be better than sleeping next to this hairy dude.
Which we know nothing about him except he's hairy.
What's the word that's used? Hairy flank?
Flank.
I didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah, at first I was like, what, is she talking about a dog? Does she have a dog?
Right, it could have been.
I thought maybe
But no, it was her boyfriend. In the end, he shows up again.
Right, but what part of your body is your flank?
It could be the only part of his body that's left. Let's be honest about that. Like just a chunk of his midsection?
Yeah, I'm going to admit I assumed it meant his butt.
Yeah, probably.
No romantic send-off from his hairy flank. No, she'd rather take the plow and the axe.
Her finger should have gotten caught in the hair and then come off there. So much for a romantic send-off.
You can have my finger while I'm gone. Do whatever you want with it.
Oh, gross.
Hairy Flanks sounds like the name of like a hard-boiled police detective, you know? Detective Flanks.
Okay. In the purposes of a short story like this, what is the goal of introducing a Jean? Jean is the one with the hairy flank. So we knew right away that she had a relationship back there. So there's no Bill Smith in the future. And that's not the point of the story. That's what he used to kind of flesh out his short story, right? It's like, I'm going to make this a romantic comedy all of a sudden.
Flesh out. I like that. Flesh Off. Flesh Off was a runner-up title for this.
And what kind of romantic send-off was she expecting without lips? You know?
Yeah,
fair.
Oops, all teeth.
Wait, what's the point of introducing a character? You don't go back to it.
I think it's showing that she has some humanity still in her, that she still has human relationships outside of, Pinky and Dave.
Yeah.
I think that's the point of it, is to show you that there is still some semblance of a human life in this destroyed, ruined, awful future.
Yeah, they mentioned that the Snatchers sleep in singles and in doubles.
Yeah, the real nasty ones have to sleep alone. I also think this very first paragraph kind of sets us up. This is a world we recognize.
I was jerked awake by the silent alarm vibrating my skull. It won't shut down until you sit up, so I did. All around me in the darkened bunk room, the Snatch team members were sleeping singly and in pairs. I yawned, scratched my ribs, and patted Gene's hairy flank. He turned over. So much for a romantic send-off. Rubbing sleep from my eyes, I reached to the floor for my leg, strapped it on and plugged it in.
An alarm, whether it's in your skull or not, when the alarm goes off, it feels like it's in your skull. If I'm reading that metaphorically, sitting up, scratched my ribs, patted Gene's hairy flank, assuming he's a man, assuming he's a dog, we don't know. And then it's not until I reach to the floor for my leg. Then we start to realize, oh, wait, what's going on here? And then it
Something
just
is
gets
off.
worse and worse and worse.
And it's how casually she keeps bringing up each step in the process. Like how casually
Exactly.
she says, I have no lips. Like stuff like that.
Measure the first paragraph of this story against the last paragraph, and this is extremely pedestrian. Nothing seems weird. It seems like a normal day for anybody. But by the end, it's like, my God, this existence is terrible. And like you were saying, it does show that there's still some humanity there. But by the end, even after everything we've experienced, we're struggling to find that recognizable shred of humanity that's left in this world, right? That's the reason it's there, I think, is just to kind of give you an entry point and allow you to immediately empathize with this character who's just starting a morning like any one of us would. Except with a hairier partner than some of us might have.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm the hairy partner. That's my concern.
Yeah, right. If you don't think there's a hairy partner, then you're the hairy partner.
He does come back at the very end.
Yeah,
Gene
he
was
does.
standing there holding a pen. I went to him, hugging him. I felt the juices start to flow. Damn it. Let's squander a little ration and have a good time.
I mean,
I guess...
it could still be a dog.
Ew, what?
So he's the guy that she has at home and the person she comes back to.
I'm sure he has a job in this building they can't leave.
I think they can leave the building. I
guess
think
they
the new
could.
people can't leave the building.
Yeah, it seems like they keep the people from the past quarantined.
In the movie, it's all acid rain. That's their big issue, is acid rain. Because it was 1989 instead of 1979.
That's true. The one thing I did note about, in terms of like the change in the eras, again, going back to the cigarettes, this is very cavalier about it. And then by the time the movie comes out, it's like, oh, they have to do it because of
They have
this,
to come up with an explanation to make
this
it
condition.
acceptable.
They can't just love it. There has to be a deeper reason for it than that.
Tobacco.
That was one of the things that I thought was
I
a
think it's a
really
great
cool
idea.
idea.
It's a great idea, but I think it might have been a product more of its time. Like, okay, well, socially, it's not what it was 10 years ago. So, here's a good idea.
Almost like having a wetsuit or something for the future. Like that breathing apparatus was the cigarette so that her lungs could,
It's like that one alien in Star Trek The Next Generation who had the like vent in front of his face and he was always breathing out of it.
Oh, yeah, Wesley's friend?
Yeah, Wesley's friend. I can't remember his
It
name.
had yeah, gosh. What was that guy's name? You're killing me. Now I'm going to have to go look that up when we're done.
And he had a brother who looked exactly the same or something, and Wesley
What are you,
went
a racist, Tug? They all look the same to you?
It wasn't me, it was Wesley. Wesley was the racist.
Yeah.
Clearly, you could tell them apart.
Yes, of course.
It wasn't the same prosthetics.
Same actor in the same prosthetics. No, it was totally different.
Eric, you mentioned that this is kind of like cyberpunk before Cyberpunk. And one of the elements that I really kind of latched onto in that regard was the shorthand nicknames they had for everything.
There were so many of them, yeah.
Like the stews and the wimps and the all
goats.
this stuff.
Goats, Joker,
the goats.
Pigeon. Yeah.
Like the first thought I had was like Copper Top in the Matrix, right?
Listen to me, Copper Top. We don't have time for 20 questions.
Right.
That was a cool one.
Stuff like that, you know?
They threw that in there.
Yeah.
With no explanation or whatever, and you just kind of have to pull it together yourself when you discover.
Once you get to that point in the movie, you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, I get it.
Duracell. The Copper Top battery.
But this does a lot of the same things. Like, we hear the word stew early on, and I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? And then it's
I didn't even figure out stew until I'd read the story more than once.
Yeah. Like,
you want to explain it to me?
Stewardess.
It's short for stewardess.
Oh.
So the stews are the
stewardesses. Well, that's boring.
We call it flight attendants now. But that's not as... I mean, what are you going to turn that into?
They use the word goat for the people, trying to describe them as cattle.
Yeah,
well, I mean, they do wind up naked in a pen at the end, yeah.
Right, but the problem is my son and I have been watching the NFL this last season.
Is that some kind of sports ball?
That's a sports ball thing.
I'm unfamiliar.
Where my son's been talking about the GOAT. Like now the GOAT is like the greatest of all time. You know, Patrick Mahomes, which, of course, we're Eagles fans over here, so thank God.
Yeah.
But
I'm a Missourian. I'm supposed to love Kansas City, so.
I'm so sorry. Only a little bit, but not really.
Here in St. Louis, we don't actually talk about football very much. We're still salty about the Rams. And that was like, what, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
But football aside... Yeah, I just every time I read GOAT, I was like, oh, greatest of all time, greatest of all time, greatest of all time. I guess the implication is that they're cattle.
That's it, yeah.
Not a whole plane full of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, right. It's interesting how the language evolves to the point where maybe this doesn't work so much anymore, Mr. Varley.
Yeah, maybe now they would just call them NPCs or something. Bots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, bots. That's
bots.
a good one.
Yeah, I guess it depends on which way the world goes.
The only other thing I had on here was tourist class, which really confused me, and I had to look it up.
I did too. I assumed it was
what
like,
was
okay, so that's like economy,
That
right?
was what they used to call economy class.
Yeah.
But they changed it in the 50s. So the fact that they're still using tourist class in like 1979 is either evidence of the time travel, or it's just that's what Varley thought of economy class.
Once I realized what it was, and I put
Varley's
that together,
just stuck in his ways. That's...
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of like that scene in the movie where Louise is just pulling out all that information about, what was it, like Women's Lib or something?
Oh, yeah, and the War of the Sexes, who won? Yeah, that scene.
Yeah,
right,
like Rosie the Riveter, all this stuff, and it's like a hodgepodge of 50 years worth of references.
The suffragette movement, 19th Amendment, Rosie the Riveter, bra burning, Gloria Steinem, ERA, the Battle of the Sexes. Who won?
And I kind of thought, okay, maybe that's it. Maybe like they've got it close, but they're not right on point with the terminology of the era. They're just pretty close with it.
Right.
Nate, we watched something else where it was like, oh, the terminology's almost there, but not quite. The Voyager episode we watched, right? With Tom Paris, a scholar
where he
of
was...
the 20th century, but he kept just getting the terminology off by like a decade.
Right. Tuvok was giving him a hard time for not quite being an expert of the 1990s.
Yeah. So I just chalked that up to the same sort of thing. Like, hey, you got pretty close.
Yeah.
You should be proud. You should be proud.
If you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Well, Erica, it'd be great to keep you around to help us rank this time travel method. But then again, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the other ones that we've talked about this season.
Not all of them. I've only heard a couple of episodes, but I can still be here to offer my commentary.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I want Eric's feedback on this.
I think it's different enough that we probably should rank it.
Oh, it's much different than the movie.
Yeah, totally.
Way, way different, I think.
It's still like basically just a portal.
It's just much smaller.
I'm picturing a small green tunnel in a bathroom.
Yeah, it's more like Portal, like the game Portal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
People are like reaching through and pulling people through.
Yeah. I kind of picture the portal from Rick and Morty. green, kind of circular, swirling.
I pictured the portal from Sliders, but green.
Okay, that's fair too.
They're all pretty similar.
Yeah.
I like the Sliders one because the impression I get is that from where Mary's at and where Mandy's at, when they're looking at that portal, I feel like Mary doesn't see the portal.
Right.
All she sees is this woman standing in front of her because she's on the wrong side of the portal to see it.
That came out of nowhere.
That's what the slider portal looks like, right? Like
right, because you can walk around it and you don't see the backside. Yeah.
Kind of a ripple effect, but you don't see, like, the actual slider portal.
Oh, Tug, are you a Sliders fan?
Of course. Tears in My Fro is one of the greatest songs ever written.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we've got an episode on Sliders. Yeah, I love
Tears
Sliders.
in My Fro.
Because I'm standing on my head, like crying tears over you or something like that. It's so great.
Because I'm standing on my head.
Yeah.
So this portal, again, like small enough to fit in a bathroom, unstable enough to not stay in the bathroom. We're talking about what we kind of picture for it. I also kind of equated it to Al's imaging chamber door mixed with the Star Trek transporter, where it's like the coordinates are important. And if you've got a vehicle that keeps moving, it's hard to maintain the appropriate coordinates to keep that portal in the same place, right?
Right. She says the math becomes a nightmare or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
is that an advantage because it's interesting or a disadvantage?
Functionally, it's a disadvantage. I think we can all agree on that.
But narratively, it makes for some cool tense moments, like especially towards the end.
Yeah, I would say narratively, it's pretty interesting.
Well, that's really curious then, because the TVA door can just pretty much be anywhere it wants to be, whenever it wants to be, in whatever direction it needs to be. And
this is more like a barely controlled wormhole kind of situation where they can only control like one end of it, and they're trying desperately to hold on to the other end. Yeah.
So what makes this interesting in the rankings then is narratively create conflict and whatnot. And is that cool enough to make this a cool method of time travel? Or do we take that as a detractor because, well, shit, if you're going to make a time machine, make one that works.
Look, they're doing the best with what they've got. They're like the Logitech.
You're going to make
guys.
a time machine, might as well do it in style.
What do you choose to rank it by? Those are really cool things for the author to consider when coming up with a portal.
There are a lot of really cool ideas with this portal, I think.
Does this portal make someone's bed for them?
No, this one does not make the bed. I mean...
It doesn't mention making the bed, but if it's close enough...
Probably couldn't make the bed in an earthquake when the coordinates are kind of shifting. But maybe if it was like a stable hotel that was not moving or sliding into something. Like if you were in a hotel and it was in like a landslide, like a rock slide, then maybe not. But if it's just a normal hotel, it would probably make the bed for you.
She does arrive in a normal hotel. So maybe this portal can tidy up a bit. Now, I think that's movie specific. Probably not sure.
That's the biggest mystery of Millennium for me. I mean, I get why it had, I guess, to make the bed because they wanted to make it look like she had never been there.
They had a mystery because how did the room get so clean? And then the solution is because it just did.
They're like, we don't know either. It falls into the same category as the backward watches. It was just like, okay, here's a mystery thing.
I'm going to disagree a little bit because it's functional narratively when he leaves the room and comes back and she's just gone.
Oh, yeah.
From that perspective, it's like, whoa, fuck, what, that's crazy. That's awesome. But then you show it from the other side and you've got stop motion covers being made.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would a time machine do that exactly?
I kind of wish we had never seen that second part.
Exactly.
I know,
I've never seen
right?
it from the other point of view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
no, but you guys bring up a lot of good points about the portal. Like, it is interesting the limitations that Varley's put on it in the short story. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure whether to list those as positive, that it's really been thought about, or is it a negative because the DeLorean works much easier, or,
Yeah, and like, if we're going by just the cool factor, there's nothing really cool about this random portal. I mean, it can be narratively interesting. That doesn't make it actually interesting. Like, this is not a time machine I would be proud to use.
Yeah, I would be proud to use it.
Whereas a DeLorean, like, come on, that's stylish.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Well, because Brian gives the movie version a hard time because it's just a portal.
It's just
like you
it's
continually shove this thing down the list. Like,
but it's a portal you can shove half an airplane through for some reason.
Right, that's my point, Tug.
It's
like
a
you
big
can
portal.
back this fucking airplane into the portal.
In midair. I don't know how that's
midair,
possible.
Right,
in midair, mind you.
That is funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because the time portal in Millennium makes substantially less sense to me than the time portal that they can't quite nail the coordinates on here. The coordinates don't even matter to the time portal in Millennium. It's like we're backing an airplane into this portal.
And if you think of it, like, from the point of view of the past, now you've got like half an airplane that's trying to stay in the air. That's not going to work.
It seems really
seems logistically impossible.
I think that's a plus for the movie, because the story version is basically Aurora Borealis entirely localized in the bathroom of this airplane.
May I see it? No.
No, Mother, it's just the Northern Lights.
As far as a time machine's concerned, it only goes back so far, right? You guys explained to me at the beginning of this whole thing, once you've used it, okay, well, you've cut off that entire source of history. You can't even go back to Pompeii and the...
That's a good point. Like, you could probably get some... Well, they would probably be much happier to know they were going to go plow somewhere.
And they'd probably be better at it.
Yeah, they would be better at it, for sure.
Definitely would be better at it.
So, like, why start with airplanes? Like, there's so many natural disasters where people were going to die.
That's what I was kind of getting at earlier. It's like, is this the most...
It's not the most efficient use of their time.
Right, like, could we find, like, a better event or something to, like...
Brian, I thought you said that was a good idea, the airplane, the doomed situations.
I mean, like, no, it's a good idea to pluck people out of doomed situations, but there are other doomed situations that you could probably maximize your time with. And, like, you mentioned Pompeii. That's a great one, right? I mentioned the Titanic, right? If you just got everybody off the Titanic and took them into the future, and then you got Titanic 2.
The Titanic is a good one. The Titanic's a good one.
Then they're on the ship for 5 years going to Centauri 3, and there's your sequel to Titanic.
Well, the problem with Titanic is there were too many survivors. Like, there would be too many people to witness it.
Have to do something about them.
Now, and this is just my brain working, but I wonder if the advantage to doing it with a missing aircraft or a disappeared aircraft is that you have some manner of record left over that indicates who was there and what needs to be left in order to not disrupt the time stream.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like if it's some natural disaster where you're not entirely sure who was caught and who was lost and who wasn't and who was found and whatever, this thing has a manifest as to what was there, what is gone, who did we lose, what were they carrying, all of that stuff. So like the Titanic would work because we know everybody that was on that fucking boat. They don't mention this in any version of the story, but how disruptive to the time stream would it be to take people from Mount Vesuvius, you know, when that erupts? Yeah. I don't know. Seems like not at all, since we don't know who any of those people are. But I don't know. It's just a thought. Like maybe in their thinking is we have to recreate this, and the only thing we have records of are these disappeared airplanes.
Yeah, I think the records are important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what if you got people from, say, Ground Zero of Hiroshima or something? Like, there's nothing left.
Yeah. Right.
Oh,
I mean, that's an entire city's worth of people.
Yeah.
Get all the people who are about to die in Hiroshima, bring them into the future and say, as Americans, you should be thankful.
Maybe they only had like 20 minutes. For some reason, that time frame was like, well, we've got a whole city to evacuate, but they've only given us 30 minutes of time travel time to do it in. So
we're wish casting here on the story, but I think that the idea of saving people from plane crashes is very sound.
It's a cool idea.
There's not a lot of plane crashes original. Maybe 2 years ago, but now we're like, oh, maybe this is a pretty good idea. So yeah, I'm here for the plane crashes, and I honestly think this portal.
I'm going to cut that part out, given that the FAA doesn't have a head anymore.
Right.
There's probably going to be like 3 plane crashes before this gets published.
Yeah, I don't want Brian on record saying I'm here for the plane crashes.
I'm here for the plane crashes. Oh, God. Maybe not great. That could be taken out of context.
You're on record as issuing a pretty harsh indictment of the FAA.
I don't know. As far as ranking this...
Let me give Tug the rundown here. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the podcast enough to know... We rank the method of time travel at the end, obviously.
I have seen that, yes.
We had a few from season 1, what we called season 1, last year's list, where the 3 remaining at the end of the year were The Guardian from the City on the Edge of Forever.
Of course.
Right? That's currently sitting in the number 1 slot.
That makes sense.
Number 2 is the Time Machine from Time Cop.
Oh, yeah.
If you've seen Time Cop, that's number 2.
It's been so long, I don't even remember what the Time Machine looks like. So.
Okay, well, trust me, it's cool.
It's like a rail car that goes down a little track.
It's cooler than that.
It's
I
way
watched
cooler
it again
than
recently.
It is cool. It is pretty cool.
Number 3, The Clock That Went Backwards, which is from the short story of the same name.
Which I have not read. But
it's a giant grandfather clock that you have to drag around with you, and it gets struck by lightning. It sends you to like one specific point in time where you have to fulfill your destiny.
Well, that sounds like a terrible time machine.
We thought so too at the time, and it was low ranked all season.
It was low ranked, but it made it by the end of the season.
We kept coming back to it
so
like
different than what you expect. Yes,
this is pretty badass. Like it was like the first Time Machine story, basically, and we were like, wow, as a first Time Machine, this is pretty good.
It was the first recorded time machine in popular media that we could find. So if you come up with something different, let us know.
What year was that?
What year was that, Brian?
Man, I don't remember, but it predated H.G. Wells.
It predated the shootout at the OK Corral. So it was 1880...
I can't remember.
Because, the Time Machine was like 1890 something, I think. Like 1898, 1899.
1881. Yeah, so it beat it by like a decade.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Worth a read, even though it is 11 pages long, single-spaced. Brian, we haven't found anything this season that cracks those top 3. Those are all from last season, and they're sitting at the top of the list.
We've done a lot of weird stuff this season, though. So
we did drug-induced time slipping from My Old Ass, which maybe you haven't seen, but
I have not heard that one yet.
Drinking, doing a bunch of shrooms and encountering your future self.
Okay.
The Time Machine from Time Cop, the comic book, which is slightly different, but pretty much the same.
Okay.
But not as cool, apparently. And then the Millennium Portal, which you're very familiar with, is number 6. The Time Travel Hammock from La Jetée.
Right,
have you seen
right.
La Jetée?
I have seen La Jetée. Yep.
Okay, so that's number 7. And then number 8 is Suicide.
Suicide!
I feel like this is probably better than Suicide Attempts.
Yeah, probably.
This is much higher on the list than Suicide, to me. I don't know where we're going to find something that's going to crack that bottom rung there.
Yeah, we finally beat the Clockstopper one.
Suicide
finally
is
beat
worse
the
than the Clockstopper watch, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for finishing that thought. A little too much Bulldog whiskey this evening. God, but it was better than these fucking olives, dude.
Where do the olives land on the time travel?
I got like 2 of them. I think I ate 2 of them.
That's not nearly enough to make up your mind. You're going to have to eat more.
I'll report back next week.
You should put them on like a pizza or something. I just feel like you need to level it out. Probably too much garlic.
It is. It's a ton of garlic. It's a big old chunk of garlic in the middle.
Like a whole clove of garlic crammed into an olive.
That's rough.
Is your wife being plagued by Nosferatu or something? Like
nothing about that sounds pleasant to me.
Yeah, but you didn't like the jalapenos either, and those were good.
I also don't really like olives.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Tug, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is an all-olive podcast.
I like black olives.
Oh, I do. I actually prefer black olives.
I like
I'm
so I'm still safe.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. All right. We're all good. So where do we leave this, Brian, on our list? I'm going to put it under the movie's Millennium Portal.
Really? I was going to put it above it. Here's what I think.
But under the Time Cop comic?
No, I was going to put it over that too.
Okay.
I think this is better than the Time
You
Cop
fucking
comic.
hate that portal. You hate the Millennium Portal.
I just think it's ridiculous. I've made my opinion about it very clear. I love that it tidies the room. I don't know, man.
Okay.
Give me something that's kind of thrilling.
All right,
This is a very thrilling time portal. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It's in the bathroom, which is also kind of weird.
I thought you were going to say thrilling.
Okay, you've got two people in an airplane bathroom, and they managed to go through this portal at the same time that two bodies are being flown over their heads. Like, how is that logistically possible?
It's like Cirque du Soleil. It's like time travel Cirque du Soleil.
See, I don't know if you guys are making positive votes or
either.
negative votes on this. This is becoming very difficult for me. Because the more this season goes on, the more I like the Millennium Time Portal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the plane and the stop motion bed being made is funny to me.
I do like how in the movie the portal is like 3-dimensional. Ever since I saw Interstellar and they said, of course it's going to be 3-dimensional. That's always stuck in my head, that like a portal should be 3-dimensional instead of flat. That's one positive I will say for the movie version, but I don't have skin in this game, so.
Well, you do tonight. You're an honorary oh boy podcaster. How are those yogurt-covered pretzels?
They are delicious. They are amazing, actually.
Those sound
like I
great,
said, I'm
yeah.
actually a Florida boy. I was born in Florida, so like key lime. It's like it's in my DNA.
That's great. Yeah, I got to check that stuff out, man. Where you buy those at, man?
I have no idea where they came from. To be honest, I just found them.
All right, so above the Time Cop comic and below drug-induced time slipping.
What do you think? I mean, what you think is it should go position 7, right?
Well, you guys are making good arguments. It's like I was saying before, I'm a little torn between the interest that comes with the limitations that are placed on it there are limitations on this, whereas there's a TVA door that you could just fucking walk through. I don't know. Okay, so the writer in me is going to come out and say, make it more interesting. Make there be difficulties that are involved in using this thing.
Yes.
Right?
And that's where I'm coming from. It's a much more interesting device. The movie Time Portal works as it should, and it's also kind of silly. So
it's just like magic. It has magic powers.
Yeah.
It does kind of have magic powers.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to look at it from a narrative perspective like that, I would put it above drug-induced time slipping from my old ass.
That's exactly where I was thinking we should put it.
Okay. All right. Well,
like
if
the new number 4 slot. That's where I think this should go.
Okay. All right. I will back that up. In the future, I'll probably be questioning it. Because I'm hoping that as we get to things like Demolition Man and further time travel thing, I don't even know what's on the docket, if I'm honest.
Oh, yeah. We got Demolition Man coming up. It's not next, but we do have it coming up.
Right.
Here's the thing. Say we've got the Time Cop railcar. We got the Time Cop comic. We've got the Millennium and the Air Raid time portals. At one point this season, if one of us wants to just completely flip-flop those two positions... Ain't nobody going to take that Time Cop offer, but I mean, like, if at some point we're like, you know, the more I think about it, the more I like the Time Portal from Millennium. One thing about the Time Portal from Millennium...
Wait, from
season,
Millennium or Air Raid?
That's what I'm saying. We could just flip-flop them at some point later in the season.
There's too much in between them. We've put too much in between them now.
I know it's madness, but...
Damn you, Brian!
But what I'm saying is last season, you know, we had the clock that went backwards pretty low, but we kept talking about it. And as much as I'd like to close the goddamn book on Millennium and Air Raid at this point, we're still going to be talking about the Millennium Time Portal, you know?
I've already used a clip from Millennium as our outgoing clip for our bonus episodes.
That's
it's not
true.
going anywhere, man.
Yeah, no, that's...
I'm sorry. It's
This is not the end.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's totally permeated the podcast for this season. I'm sorry.
We cannot wash the stink of Millennium off this.
But hey, it brought Tug onto the show.
Yeah, it's
Hey.
So, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So perfect.
Yeah, it's great
Okay.
having you on the show, man. This has been fun.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was a lot of fun. I hope you come back and do it.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. That's all we've got for tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, that's all we got for tonight. The next episode drops right before April Fool's Day.
You don't want to tell them that.
I'm not going to tell them what we're doing. I'm just saying we've got something special in store.
It's another Millennium episode.
Yeah, but they're going to ask me what it is. Doesn't your mom ask?
Only Misty Zapes is going to ask you what it is.
Only Misty's going to ask. But our next episode is going to be a perfectly normal episode about actual time travel media. I promise.
So we're getting away from Millennium for the next one.
But if you want more, you can always go to my YouTube channel and check out my video on it.
Ooh,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, we should absolutely plug the Unapologetic Geek one more time, and the book Paradox. Can't thank you enough for coming on,
No,
Eric.
not a problem.
And
It was a lot of fun.
I hope that you do come back and do it again.
But you mentioned Demolition Man. That sounds like fun.
Oh, yeah, come back for Demolition Man. Absolutely. That's going to be a fun one.
Well, thank you so much. And everybody, go check out Paradox on Amazon. Like I said, I've read at least the foreword and the preview that's allowed on there. There is a hook that makes you want to keep going. So good work there. And I've really enjoyed the channel. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have reached out. And
Excellent.
I'd be having this conversation with just Brian.
Nobody wants that.
Well, I am very honored to be your very first guest. And I'm excited to be guesting on a show dedicated specifically to time travel, because it's one of my favorite subjects.
Perfect.
Well, folks, thanks for listening. As always, be sure to subscribe to the show. Leave us comments on your preferred apps. Some apps don't let you leave comments. And I say, fuck those ones. Leave us positive comments and reviews. Hey, you could send us an email too. ohboyqlpod@gmail.com is the address. Some of you know it by heart. Others, would it hurt you to reach out? You're killing us.
Eric, do you have a place where you'd like people to reach out to you?
Well, I mean, aside from just going to my YouTube channel and leaving comments, because I do read every single comment I get.
There's some good discussions down there, too.
Yeah, but if you wanted to email me, you could email me at emagill00@yahoo.com. I have to spell it out because nobody knows how McGill is spelled.
Yeah, there's no C. There's no C, guys.
There's no C. It's not McGill. It's McGill. Which, if you're in Canada, there's a university.
Hey, you can follow us on social media, too. I am at Captain Burns, CaptainBern on Blue Sky, and Brian.Lee.Martin on Instagram and Threads.
And I am at Action Nate on both Blue Sky and Threads.
I barely am on social media. You can find me at E_McGill Writer, I think, at Facebook.
Or don't. Whatever.
It's freaking Facebook. Who cares?
So, yeah. Good for you, man. Shrugging off the shackles of social media.
I have an X account, but I haven't used it in like 5 years.
Oh, that's the place that shall not be named. Yeah. Folks, thanks for listening, as always. Until next time, I'm Brian.
I'm Nate.
And I'm Eric.
And we'll see you in the future.
And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Have you ever found a diamond in the rough that nobody else seems to appreciate the way you do? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support what I do even more, please consider joining my Patreon to get access to bonus content, vote on future topics, and more. And yes, I'll plug it again, don't forget to snag a copy of my debut novel Paradox, available through Amazon. You can find links on my website at emcgill.com, where you'll find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Until next time, though, when we'll find ourselves trapped by a malevolent intelligence of our own making, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, even if it happens to be the movie Millennium.